Hey guys, Dozer here, bringing you a video to talk about my experience at Flesh and Blood Nationals in the United States for November of 2021. It's good to be back. It's good to be talking with you guys again, and hopefully, we can go over here all the matchups that I did, go through a bit of a short deck tech, and kind of do a decompress and talk about what happened at the event. So here we go. So I figured we would start with the deck tech first. I have not opened my deck box since I got back. A lot of flying around, a lot of traveling and everything. So it's gonna be cool to kind of get back and just kind of see what state everything was in when we kind of left Florida. So first thing that I wanted to kind of talk about as far as this deck box was great as like a product just to have during the event. I always had the ability to keep my cards separated from my equipment, including my tokens and such. And so even during the game, if I wanted to have my sideboard kind of obscured from my opponent, I could stack it in, something like this, so that I could see it and get stuff out of it, like my tokens, but I wasn't showing anything to my opponent, which was really nice. So let's see here. As far as the main 80, we'll get to that in a moment. But as far as the equipments go, we can go over those very quickly. We've got Prism, naturally. We've got Luminaris, also naturally. No surprises there. Halo of Illumination. Goliath Gauntlet. Vestige of Soul. Phantasmal Footsteps. Dreamweavers. And on the other side of that, we had our Null Rune Gloves. So this was the equipment lineup for the event. It all performed very well. I never ran into let's see here. We'll get into the match history in a moment here, but if I just take a brief look at it, in Classic Constructed, I only faced Briars, Bravo, Prism, and Chain, and a single Bolton. Otherwise, I faced no other characters. To add to that, just a bit of a spoiler here, half of my CC matches were against Briar. So, you can guess how that was to play against and to have to sit through for 2 days. So, we'll get to that in a moment. But, yeah, this is the equipment lineup. Mainly what I would do is obviously Footsteps, Vestige, and Halo would be in for every matchup. But I guess we'll put them over here like so, right? The only thing that would really change would be which glove I brought. And so the Goliath Gauntlet was supposed to come in for Dorinthia. It was supposed to come in for Kano, potentially if I didn't feel like I needed the Null Rune, but I probably kept the Null Rune. Katsu, Lexi, anything that would be allowed, that we'd be allowed to attack, I would bring the Goliath Gauntlet in for. Against, Brute, against Guardian, that would be Dreamweavers, and against any arcane dealing classes, normally the Null Rune would come in. That's basically how that would go. So that was our equipment lineup. Beyond that, we can get into the 80. So the first thing we'll talk about, once we get our tokens out of here, which, by the way, always make sure you bring enough tokens because you never know when you're going to be on stream. Speaking of, make sure you keep on a lookout. I'll be doing a VOD review of my feature match that I played at Nats. I got to be on stream, and so I'll be doing a breakdown of that in the style that I do my Patreon exclusive videos. So if you enjoy the stream breakdown, you might also enjoy the Patreon exclusive videos. So think about becoming a patron. In the meantime, we can go into the 80s. So we ran 3 Raging Onslaught Reds. As we all know, I'm a very big fan of this card because it's a 7 attack card that blocks for 3. Against Prism, this is a very key card to be able to get tempo back no matter what Herald they're throwing at you. And having the ability to attack for 7 without being Phantasm broken is really good because a lot of times in these more defensive matchups, you'll be needing to block out a lot, and so you won't really be getting go again anyway off of Luminars. So what'll happen is you'll have like a blue in hand and a Raging Onslaught, and you'll be able to attack for 7, which they can't stop. So as a 2-card hand, that's not a bad play at all. And in certain matchups, like against Bravo or against, not that I run Raging Onslaught against Bravo anymore, but maybe against like Oldhim or against more block-heavy characters like Rune Blades, when they're kind of just running you over, you can get some damage in that they can't just pop like a 9th plate or something that they sideboarded in. So Raging Onslaught is my go-to card there. You could run something like a Command and Conquer in a less Prism-heavy meta. I think that would probably be better as a Phantasm popping card. But because Herald of Triumph is still so popular, I still think that 7-attack cards are the way to go. And that Command and Conquer, while it is a good card, is not really worth the red slot for the fact that it has those... well, it's not that it's a bad card, but it's just there are a lot of situations where you attack the Command and Conquer, and you're not really threatening the ability to get around blocks. So your opponent's going to just be able to stop you from getting value out of it. So there's really not that synergy of like Pummels and Art of Wars and Ira abilities that really get it over the top and make it hard to block for your opponent. Otherwise, Celestial Cataclysm ×3. This is also an anti-Prism card. It's got the 7 attack. It's a light. It's a yellow. It's blocks 3. We can play it for 0/7 go again in the late game. Never resolved it once in the tournament, but I was able to block with it a lot, and the fact that it is a light card is very relevant for when you are trying to do your Genesis and Halo and Tome plays. Beyond those guys, we've got 3 copies of Unmovable Yellow. Unmovable basically is the anti-Bravo, Dorinthia, and that's about it. Like, basically it's just for those guys. Maybe you could run it against like Azalea or something. People that like to do a lot of dominate, or people that really have that one big attack that they're really trying to get through. And obviously Unmovable is very good against Dorinthia because it doesn't trigger Reprise when played from Arsenal and blocks for a ton. Yellow Immovable, very good. You will, if you get to see my feature match, you'll get to see how much work that did in the Bravo matchup. It's fantastic. Beyond that, we had, looks like here we had the 1 red Glisten, and then 3 yellow Glisten. So you can just kind of find those real quick. Basically, Glisten came in here for Oldhim. I was practicing against a lot of Oldhim. I expected Oldhim to be pretty strong because a lot of people were trying him. And before the UK Nats, he was a lot more experimented with. And so Glisten really came in for him. Also Bravo. These cards are really fantastic against those characters, as well as being a very good core game plan in a lot of matchups. Unfortunately, you have to be able to preserve your auras and protect them for Glisten to be valuable. And as we all know, Rosetta Thorn is basically impossible to block efficiently, so we had to compromise and say, okay, well, we're not going to be able to run Glisten into that matchup, but for all the other matchups like Dash, Bravo, these slower type of matchups, it's a fantastic card. So I ran 4 of those. Beyond that, I ran the classic, and I think effectively mandatory, triple Arclight Sentinel. Arclight Sentinel being the Spectra card, which prevents your opponent from attacking anything other than Arclight Sentinel. And as a defensive tool, it's probably one of the strongest defensive tools in the game, which is why it costs 6 resources to play this card. It's a very strong card, and if you play it at the correct time and you set it up properly, it can do a lot of work for you. At the same time, it can also be a dead card a lot of the time, and it's very hard to get value out of it unless you're really planning around it and really thinking ahead and how you're going to use it or how you're going to shape the pitch in your hands. So I would say that even like the Briar matchup doesn't actually do enough because it's hard to resolve it, and yeah, you're going to end their turn, but they're not going to really lose anything out. They're going to Arsenal whatever card they were going to play, and then you're just kind of back in the same position that you were already in. So what I found with Arclight was that as a strictly defensive tool, it's much better against the Go Tall decks, as you would expect, but against Go Wide, while it can do work, it's just a piece of the puzzle. It's not necessarily going to be your saving grace. Beyond Arclight Sentinel, I ran 3 Phantasmaclasm Red, 3 Prismatic Shield Red, and 3 Prismatic Shield Yellow. Basically, Phantasmaclasm is one of my favorite cards in the game. It allows you to mess with your opponent's hand, which is incredibly valuable the more experience you get with the game, because you know how to break your opponent's turns. if I know that that player really, really needs access to a very specific combination of cards, like let's say there's a Briar and they only have one attack action in their hand, or they only have one non-attack action. If you shuffle that away and they don't draw the other one, you basically turn off Rosetta Thorn for the turn, as well as potentially turning off their ability to even use their attack buffs. So Phantasmaclasm, as again, a swinging for 9 as a 3 cost, is really, really strong and feels really great to resolve. I really enjoyed running that card, and it did a lot of work for me. Fun fact, so part of my Boltyn play line, when I was in that matchup, that is an interesting play line that might be counterintuitive, is to, like on turn 1, I attacked with Phantasmaclasm by pitching a blue. I didn't need to go again, I wasn't looking to get it, and the reason I did that was, I'm just trying to see what his hand is and try and see what I can get out of it. In his hand, he had a Lumina Ascension, a Command and Conquer, and 2 other cards which weren't really that important. The funny thing is that he started thinking, oh, well, I know what you're gonna, send to the bottom, and he was pointing at Command and Conquer. I'm like, no, I think I'm gonna put the Lumina Ascension on the bottom of your deck, and he was kind of surprised. But if you think about it, it makes total sense. Every time that you are going to be playing against an opponent when you're going first, they're just going to draw up their hand again, right? Like, there's no real benefit to getting the Command and Conquer to the bottom of their deck, because not only are they now going to be incentivized to save it for later and be able to pull a Command and Conquer out on you if the game goes long, but also they're going to be able to hold that Lumina Ascension, maybe arsenal it, and really go off on one of their turns. That's pretty scary. So I decided to bottom the Lumina Ascension, and in his mind, he decided, yeah, I'm going to block that with Command and Conquer, which was fine, but I don't really think it helped him, because Command and Conquer, I was happy to get that out of his hand. Like, that was a double win for me. I got the card out of his hand, I got another important card to the bottom of his deck, and then I didn't have to worry about it for the rest of the game. So that's a fun little playline you can do with Phantasmaclasm. Fantastic card. Red and yellow Prismatic Shields. These cards are the go-to cards for the Prism game plan against like Bravo and most matchups. They offer a bit of healing too, so even in like the Runeblade matchups, when you're trying to pare down to 60, normally the reds or so will stay in, because if you're on turn 1, you can heal for 3, like a Sigil of Solace, and maybe do some attacks and get some ping damage in. The yellows are really key as well, because a lot of times you'll be able to draw them, pitch them to do various plays. And it's always funny when people say, oh, what color is that? I'm like, oh, it's yellow. They're like, yellow? It's like, yeah, yellow. So that works out pretty well a lot of the time. So I still run 6 of these. I still think it's a fantastic card, and I really think it's what gives Prism the longevity to win longer matchups. I don't think you have as good of a time winning longer matchups when you run only the reds, because once you're out of them, you're out of them. And then if you're having trouble getting Soul, it's really hard for you to get more shields out there. Beyond that, as far as Spectras, I ran 3 Merciful, 3 Genesis, and 2 Ode to Wrath. I felt like this was the right number. I never felt like I needed a third Ode to Wrath, but I really liked having the second one. The 3 Genesises, I think, worked out really well, because when you are really trying to get that high density of them so that you can make sure that you draw into them, you really want to make sure that you up that ratio as high as possible, especially in the matchups where it does work, such as in Bravo or something like that, or even in Briar. If they leave it alive, it'll give you a lot of value over time. So Genesis is a very great card, especially when people don't respect it. So Genesis at 3 was good, and Merciful is like a guaranteed 3 of all the time. It's the best aura. I always would recommend running 3 Merciful, no matter what you're doing. So those were the Spectras. I didn't run any Parable of Humility. Parable of Humility just hasn't been doing enough work for me, so I haven't been running it at all. Ran 3 red Sink Below, 3 yellow Sink Below, and 3 yellow Soul Shield. Basically, tank Prism, it's all about protecting your Spectral Shields, keeping them alive, attacking with them for free on your turn with Luminaris. If you can give them Go Again, that's great. If you can Glisten buff them, that's great. And so the red and yellow Sink Belows allow you to not only block and block around attack reactions or awkwardly balanced things like 4 attack cards. Sink Below can stop that for 1 card. But you also can fix your hands. So if I have, and that goes for Soul Shield as well. So if I'm up against a deck and they're attacking me and all I've got something in my hand is like an Ode to Wrath, well, I can pitch the Ode to Wrath to pay for Soul Shield to block 6, or I can filter it away by sinking it to the bottom and trying to draw into a card that actually blocks. So that's the real reason that I run all these, and they perform fantastically. I wouldn't change a thing. Beyond that, I ran 3 yellow Tome of Divinity because that's the only color it comes in, and it's one of the best cards that Prism has access to. Being able to have your Merciful Retribution destroyed, or your Soul Shield resolve, and or procking your Halo, or hitting with the Herald, and being able to draw off of a single blue to get an extra card of advantage is really, really strong. And the fact that you can pitch them for yellow to pay for all your other effects and then get them in the late game is incredibly useful for Prism. And while this meta did not really have any slow enough matchups for me to set up the triple tome or even a double tome, or even really think about my pitch in general, they are still fantastic cards, even when you're in that race. Because, again, like if I've got my Soul Shield and I have to block with it, pitching a yellow, as long as I have a blue light card in my hand, like a blue Herald, when it comes back to me into my soul after the combat chain closes, Vestige of Soul will activate, and then you can play Tome to refill your hand. And so you basically blocked for 6 damage on that turn, and you still have 3 cards in your hand. If that was in your arsenal, then you have a 4-card hand. So you basically, lost nothing to stop 6 damage, which is very, very strong. Beyond that, I ran the classic 2 Energy Potion. I think Energy Potion is incredibly core to Prism, or really any character that can get Go Again for free, or ample Go Again, I should say, because being able to end your turn with an Energy Potion and pay for not only important cards like Soul Shield in full, but also being able to make up for the lack of pitch and other effects like Genesis. Being able to Energy Potion for a Genesis will let you keep that extra card in hand to get the other stuff into Soul a lot easier. And I'm just really big on Energy Potion. It performed great. 2 is the right number. I wouldn't cut it or bump it at all. I ran 2 Whispers of the Oracle yellow. It's a block that pitches yellow and helps you set up your next turn. In defensive matchups, you can make sure that you're not drawing into instants so that your next turn's block or aggression is a lot better. I think if this is like the only card in your hand, you're really happy about that because you either have the ability to pitch it to swing wide with all their spectral shields, or you have the ability to, and when you're on the defensive, say, okay, well, I'm going to poke, I'm going to play this, Go Again, make sure my next turn is how I want it to be. Poke with 1 spectral shield, it might be like a glistened up 4 token even, and then you just have a lot of benefit from that. So I think the 2 is the right number. 3 can definitely feel too clunky, especially because it's a generic, and that messes up your math on your Genesis, Halo, and other such plays. So I wouldn't, and like Tome plays, right? So I wouldn't really worry about running more than that, but I think the 2 felt good, especially when I blocked a Bolton with it, and he didn't get his extra attack buff for free. Well, I still blocked 3, so that was very strong. Beyond that, I basically ran the normal assortment of Heralds. It's 21 cards. Basically 3 of all of them. 3 Herald of Protection blue, 3 blue Ravages, 3 blue Rebirth, 3 blue Triumph, 3 blue Wartune, 3 yellow Wartune, 3 Herald of Erudition, and then 3 yellow Protection. That's basically the lineup in every single matchup. This is the core foundational pitch base of the deck, and these Heralds, in my opinion, have always been and will still remain to be the best Heralds in the game. I think the only one you could really argue over is Yellow Protection. I think Yellow Protection could probably be replaced with Yellow Rebirth or maybe Yellow Triumph, depending on what you're trying to do. But since this deck loves Spectral Shield so much, I felt like this was the highest value Herald, and so I went with Herald of Protection Yellow. And so yeah, then obviously you got like the rest of your copies here, whatever. But the point is that the Herald core is always the same. Like I always ran them in every single matchup, and they were foundational and core to being able to win games. Like they're such good cards. While being very simple on the surface, they have a lot of nuances to them, and I think as anybody improves with Prism, they start to realize just how much nuance there is with these cards. So yeah, that was the 80. Pretty standard, not really changed much from my last deck tech video. I was considering about running cards like Pummels or Lunging Presses, or little cheeky cards that can help you get over in some matchups, but what I found in my testing was that I really could just not beat Briar no matter what I did. Not reliably, anyway. Like, sure, you could take some games off of Earth Briar, or sure, you could take some games off Lightning Briar if they ignored your auras, and maybe you got like a really early lucky lead where you just slammed down a bunch of Spectras. But the problem was that Briar just did way too much damage for us to really do anything about, and I just ended up deciding that I was gonna sandbag or just not worry about the Briar matchup and just hope I didn't run into any and dodge as many as possible. And as you might have heard earlier, I faced 5 Briars out of my 10 CC matches. So I didn't quite get very lucky on that. I talked to some other Prisms and other players that were there, and they said, oh, I only faced against 1 Briar. And I'm like, well, that makes me feel a little worse, but that's all right. We still went undefeated in every matchup that wasn't Briar in CC. So, and we even got a win against a Briar once because he didn't kill Genesis. So, that was pretty good. And so let's kind of get into that breakdown of how the event played out, because maybe we can learn something from it. So we'll start with U.S. Nationals Day 1, Page 1. This is how I track my life totals and such. Normally I'll say like, oh, am I going first or second? Did I win or lose? What character am I playing against? What character am I playing? With life totals, and kind of just tracking damage over time. So started out with the draft situation. I went 2-1 in draft on day 1, piloting Briar. I was past a very good Briar pool of very heavy Earth with some Lightning Splash. It did very well for me. I lost to the Oldheim in game 1 by a dominated Cracker Jacks. No, it wasn't Cracker Jacks, actually. It was it was an aura buffing a Thump to 9 dominate. So he hit me with a dominated Glacial Footsteps earlier in the game as well, and so he just got me with the dominate. So it was close otherwise, and we moved on to the next couple rounds, playing against Lexi and a Briar, and I was able to take both of those games. Nothing really special happened in the draft. I think the interesting thing was the drafting portion of the situation, not necessarily playing out the games. I would say that the my strategy for draft was to start by drafting the best Earth cards possible. If I saw a Bomb Lightning card, I would pick the Lightning card to be able to go towards Briar if I wanted. But I figured that since Oldheim and Briar felt like the strongest generic heroes in the set, that if I just got good Earth cards like blues and simple, strong cards that worked with a small hand, that I would be able to do well. And so that was my initial draft strategy. The thing that went on beyond that was, well, if you start getting past a lot of Runeblade cards, then you can start picking up Runeblade, especially Earth Runeblade cards like Bramble Spark and Stir the Wildwood. Very efficient cards. Even stuff like Explosive Growth as a rare. Still does Arcane, still buffs your turns, so it was pretty solid as an Earth Fusion. And Rites of Replenishment and stuff would give you that longevity against the longer decks by putting cards back into your deck. So that was pretty solid. Having some Lightning Splash, like Ball Lightnings or Lightning Surges, Electrifies, stuff like that, was always key for Briar, because being able to have that extra splash gives you access to some Lightning Infused cards, such as Inspire Lightning, which I ran in every Briar deck that I have played, Red Inspire Lightning, at least one copy, because a lot of the time you'll get your opponent down to 3 life, and then you just blast them for game, which is exactly what happened in my game 3 of day 1 draft, where I was up against a Briar mirror with one of my buddies that I went with. We were both in the same pod by happenstance, and I got him for game with Inspire Lightning, so not anything you can do at that point. So that was a pretty good, like, 1 of or 2 of in a deck, and you can always block with it or whatever if you have those embodiments up. So I went on to do CC. So NCC, my very first match was against a Prism. It was the Prism Mirror. I was very excited because I love the Prism Mirror. The guy I was playing against played a very clean game. He did a great job. He made my life extremely difficult by dropping a library early and keeping a 5-card hand for almost the entire game. I made a pretty severe misplay early on in the game where I meant to use a Soul Shield and a Sink Below Yellow to block some big Herald But the problem was that I had another Soul Shield in my hand, or maybe it was an Arsenal, whatever the case was. And instead of pitching the Herald in my hand that I wanted to pitch, and whatever it was, I ended up pitching the Sink Below. So then now I've got a Herald in my hand. I'm past blocks, I'm in reactions, and I'm thinking, okay, well, I've just played a Soul Shield. I'm like, crap, I just wasted this block. If I want to stop him from breaking my Spectral Shields, I have to overblock. So I had to use my other Sink Below, which put me on the back foot for the rest of the game. From that point on, I had to claw my way back into the game, and eventually was able to take it for the win by eventually using his own library against him and building up just a wall of shields and glisten tokens and poking him down and ending the game. Another thing was the Red Raging Onslaughts did a lot of work in that matchup because every time he threw a Triumph at me, or sometimes I would Sink Below and swap something out, I would draw into a 7 because of the high density, and I'd be able to stop like an Erudition or something. So that was a very, very close game. I had started out with a very overwhelming HP lead to a point where I had probably 20 more HP than him at the beginning, but then he started to come back into the game, and I just had to take a lot of damage, going down to 3 life before I was able to finally finish him off. Game 5 was against Bravo. Bravo, this was I don't believe this was the feature match. I believe the feature match was on day 2. So the first Bravo game was over pretty quickly. There wasn't much to say. I took 1 hit to the face, which was a Zealous Belting. For the rest of the game, I took 0 damage and got him down. Again, this deck is very teched against Bravo. All the defense reacts and all the aura game plan makes it very favored for Prism, especially if the Bravo doesn't have every tech and doesn't play perfectly. So we were able to get the win there. And then we were able to play against the Chain. So I'm feeling pretty good at this point. I'm currently X1 going into round 6. I play against the Chain on Rosetta Thorn, and I had done enough testing versus Chain leading up to Nats to know that you can't aggro him out. He's still going to win that race. So I decided to simply block him out and just let him die to deck out. So that's exactly what happened. He would attack. I was able to, maybe take a maximum of 4 damage a turn. Most of the time it'd be like 1 or 2 or something, but sometimes I'd take 4. And sometimes I'd be allowed to attack back. Sometimes I'd be able to attack with a Phantasmaclasm, or sometimes I'd be allowed to attack with like some auras. But in the end, he simply ran out of cards, and I was able to end the game. Game 7. This was the second to last game on day 1, and the opponent that I was playing against was Tyler Horspool, the winner of the Las Vegas Calling. He was playing Briar, which was disappointing for me to see because I really liked the fact that he played Prism at a high level and did well with Prism, and was hoping that he would stick with it. But he elected to pick up the best deck of the format and play to the tournament, just as he did in Vegas. So good for him. He actually ended up making top 8, so that was good for him. But, it was a pretty boring matchup. Nothing I could really do on the aggression front. Even with a double Erudition first turn, I really couldn't push through any damage through all of his armor and such. And then for the rest of the game, he just had more efficient cards, was able to remove everything I was potentially trying to do, and just outvalued me with the best deck of the format. Nothing really to talk about there. Briar is really boring as Prism. There's really no interaction that you have against it, so they'll all play out basically the same. So I won't really go into too much detail and waste time on those. Day 2, not day 2. So the final game of day 1, Nats, was against another Briar. This was against Big Mood from Discord. Shout out to you. It was good to meet you. And we were able to have a pretty quick game. Again, couldn't really put up much of resistance, tried to block out, but every turn when you're losing 4+ life to Arcane and mixed damage, it's just really brutal, and there's nothing you can do. So we knew that going in, and we were proven right. So going into day 2, we were then X and 3, and we started out the day with a game in draft. So in this draft, I actually got past a lot of ice cards, no guardian cards, no Runeblade cards, no lightning, and no earth. So I had to basically go full into Ice Lexi. But luckily for me, some of my first cards were very strong. I had things like Red Weave Ice. I had stuff like Red Ice Quake. I had stuff like Lightning Storm and a bunch of ice fused red arrows, as well as a good number of Winter's Bites. I think I had 5 Winter's Bites, 3 red, 1 yellow, 1 blue. And because of that, I was able to have a very good matchup into Briars, where I'd force cards out of their hand continuously and to be able to pump my dominated arrows to push through damage. And so my first game was against an Oldhim, who I got game, a very close match, though. It was 3 HP to 2 HP at the end, with a dominated Lightning Storm double fused arrow. So that was very strong. Then in game 2, it was a Briar matchup. I was able to keep the cards out of the Briar's hand, keep myself at 1 HP for long enough to be able to end the game, because they were never able to get the Rosetta off, because I just kept taking stuff out of their hand and giving them Frostbites. So that was very, very effective. And then, obviously, game 3 of draft was against another Briar. And I was doing really well for the most part, but eventually I just fell on the back foot because there's one turn where I drew all reds, and I just couldn't play anything so while blocking. And I had to block to stay alive. So I ended up having to get on the back foot in that game and was never able to recover and lost. So at this point, I'm X and 4. At this point, the chances of me getting to top 8 are very slim. I basically have to dodge every Briar in Swiss and play perfectly to be able to get to top 8 at this point. But in our first match out of draft, we actually were off to a great start. We got to play against a Bravo on stream. And so again, I'll link that in the description so you guys can watch the breakdown of that and see that play-by-play there. And so we can move on to game 13, which was against a Briar. That was an auto loss. Obviously, we put up the best fight that we could, but there's just nothing you can do. Briar is just insane. Plunder Run, Rosetta Thorn, everything working off of generics. No real interesting stuff to say there. Although I do think one of these Briars in the next 3 that are here was Dagon White, who ended up also being in top 8. So, not bad players by any means, but when you're a good player playing the best deck, there's really not much you can do as the other person. So, nothing to really say there. I did get a win against a Briar in game 14. I think we were all starting to get pretty fatigued at that point, just mentally and physically. Has been a lot of flesh and blood over the past 2 days, and he just wasn't killing my Genesis. And so even though he got me down to 18 life, eventually I was just healing too much through all my Genesis triggers that I was able to close out the game. So make sure you kill Genesis. Make sure you kill auras over the course of a long game. Like if you're going for lethal, yeah, you can ignore the auras, but when you are in that early to mid game stage, you should definitely be killing the auras. But either way, we had a W on our win record, so we went into game 15 against another Briar. And this was heartbreaking to me because I had planned to not run into literally half Briars in CC. A third would be fine because that was about the population of the tournament, 30-something% of Briars. But when you run into like literally half Briars, it's when that's your worst matchup, it feels really bad. It's like playing Kano into half Prisms. And at this point, I'm just thinking to myself, okay, whatever. I got on stream. I'm on day 2. I'm happy. I'm just going to see how far I can go. But yeah, every time I saw a Briar, I made the mental note to check who was around me in the tables. There were always Lexis and Bravos and such. And I'm just like, man, I wish, or like Dorinthia even, I wish I could face anything besides Briar. But by the luck of the draw, or the unluck of the draw, I got put against multiple Briars in a row, which knocked me out of contention for top 8. And obviously, top 8 would not have gone well anyway, because 7 of the top 8 were basically Rosetta Thorn users, 5 of which were Briar, and 2 of which were still Chain after his ban. So, well, the Seeds ban. So, definitely got some balance questions for LSS, as we all do. But, that is what it is. And then in the final match, we played against a Boltyn. Boltyn was very cool. It was the Raiden Boltyn. We had a very interesting start to the game, and just throughout the whole time, there's a lot of cool interactions, a lot of cool maneuvering that happened, until I was able to build up a wall of shields and eventually poke him down per game. And then that was the end of the tournament run. We made top 64 with that record, making 54th place, and kind of representing Prism. It was great. So, as an overall, just kind of summary of how the event went, it's like a wrap up thing. I really enjoyed going with my crew of playtesters by our leader, I guess you'd call him the ring leader who got everybody together. He calls us the Fab Friends, and he actually ended up getting top 32. Matt did. He's as we all know, the world's best Dorinthia player, according to him, and maybe according to everybody that he's played against. Who knows? Shout out to Drew, Bryce, Hasiel. Shout out to Young. Shout out to basically everybody from North Carolina, and everybody. Alex as well. Ethan also goes by Mansant on YouTube. He's the Levia guy. Alejandro. Forgive me if I'm forgetting everybody's name to mention, but like Logan, Tyler, a lot of people. So to thank and to appreciate for having a great weekend. You know, a bunch of us did really well, and a bunch of us kind of had to drop and go and try and do other events, but then do well there, just have fun, repping our different decks. So the event was really fun. I mean, yes, Briar kind of ruined the taste in everyone's mouth. You know, as the tournament went on, a lot of my playtest group were all playing Briar as well, because they got onto the Lightning Briar thing a couple months ago as well. And, you know, they just kept saying, oh, this is miserable. Oh, the Briar mirrors, like, all it is Briar mirrors in the top tables. So that was just kind of the general consensus from everybody, mirroring kind of my opinion as well. And while going to the event, being around everybody, meeting people, seeing people that you've met over the internet and kind of meeting in person for the first time was really nice. The competitive side and like the balance and the diversity of the format was abysmal. I mean, really, walking into a matchup and knowing that you're just playing against something that's basically impossible to beat unless you have a very specific hard counter is just really depressing. And when that's like the newest deck in the format where it just came out and it's automatically the strongest thing, basically bar none, it makes you really wonder whether or not, you know, devoting the time to testing all these different strategies is really even worth it. So I played Prism because I wanted to have fun and rep the Prism gang. If I really wanted to win the tournament, I also would have just played Briar. But I think you have to make that decision for yourself of why do you play the game, right? Do you play the game because you want to win, or do you play the game because you want to win while having fun, playing the strategy that you enjoy? For some people, that's just, playing the best deck is just playing the game, and so they have fun doing that, and they have fun winning, which is great for them. But for me, if I wasn't playing Prism, no matter how well I did, even if I won the whole thing, I wouldn't feel happy with that. Because, you know, this is the character that got me into the game. This is the character that keeps me in the game. And no matter rain or shine, I will play Prism at a competitive level and keep repping her and, you know, doing well with her. So hopefully we can get some new tools for her in the future. And she can kind of, or we can pray that LSS addresses the problems with Runeblade and all the generic non-attack actions that have been kind of showing up a lot and kind of pushing Runeblade into the stratosphere. And then maybe the other decks can have some time in the sun as well and potentially receive their own balance changes as well. One of the things that I find interesting about Prism is that if Briar was not so oppressively strong, I think Prism would probably be that oppressive. I think Prism is very strong, and I think that especially the more people understand and practice the Aura game plan or the tank game plan, that Prism would probably be the defining matchup in the game, just based off how strong she can be. So, you know, I want Briar to be balanced so that if Prism does rise up and take that spot, that she could also receive balancing. I think card games these days really benefit from having more frequent balancing and more flexible approaches to that. And I think LSS is really worried about, you know, depriving the players of like the monetary value of their cards, when I think they might be losing sight of the fact that people only will pay money for the cards, besides the collectors, right? The players will only pay money for the cards if the game is fun. And playing against all Briar isn't fun, right? Playing against all of anything isn't fun. So I think there's something that can be said there where you can ban certain cards or certain colors, or you can errata certain things so that they become more in line with the intended balance of the game, and to promote deck diversity and strategical diversity, which would make people enjoy playing the game more and potentially explore other decks as well. So that's just my 2 cents on it. It's kind of what I was left thinking after the whole event, where all you're seeing is Briar, Briar, Briar. And a lot of the things that they could change aren't necessarily money cards. Like if they errata Plunder Run, or if they ban Rosetta Thorn in Constructed, then they're going to be able to greatly affect the power level of these decks without necessarily harming the monetary investment of something like a legendary equipment or something like a suit of Majestics. There are definitely ways that they can go about it that get around those problems, and I hope that they're exploring those and thinking hard on it, because after however many months of Chain being the dominant deck, to have more Runeblade, which is basically just Chain 2.0 that doesn't run out of gas, it's exhausting. So hopefully we get that fixed, and hopefully LSS kind of gets on that path for us, and be looking forward to the new cards and supplemental set. Maybe that'll fix everything. Who knows? Maybe this was just Briar's time to shine, and every character gets their time in the sunlight. But I guess we'll see how things shape up over the course of the rest of the Nationals, and potentially in the future matchups and tournaments that are coming. Otherwise, that was basically the tournament experience. Overall, I would say the judges did okay. We didn't have to make a lot of judge calls at Nats, thank God. I think the best thing was that all the players that came to Nats were basically pretty experienced, and so there weren't really any technical questions. I think a lot of why judges get called in the tournament is that people, being competitive, are looking for any advantage they can get, and when an obscure ruling comes up that they might know, then they might simply feign ignorance to try and get a bit of an advantage. I think that's definitely possible. Like, it's happened at multiple events now, and I think that that's probably inherent or endemic to card games in general. So I'm glad that the judges that they had were a bit more prepared this time than they were for Vegas. And I'm glad that, the rules are becoming a bit more well-written and a bit easier to understand, because the last thing you want in your tournament is to have to appeal a judge decision because you know how the appropriate ruling has been ruled before, and you don't want the judge who doesn't sound very confident to be the one deciding whether or not you win or lose the game off of a technicality or off of a rules misunderstanding. Otherwise, the event staff did a great job. The event went much smoother than Vegas did, so they're improving a lot, which is great for them. And I would say that the side events were very fun. The on-demand events were definitely what I gravitated towards. Just paying for some packs to do draft and just seeing what you get and trying to win some prize tickets to get some more packs. That and the fact that you get to have a much more casual environment for draft. It was a lot more fun. When you're playing in the competitive level events like Nationals or the Call-In or the ProQuest, it can definitely be stifling because you're literally instructed not to talk during that the whole drafting process. It's a silent, basically, hour, which isn't really fun. It's fun to draft and try and get the best deck you can for yourself and play that game, but it was so much more enjoyable to kind of get to know the people at the table. Just kind of have that more casual approach to the draft. And so that was really nice to have as like the side events. The other side events weren't really that appealing. Commoner Blitz or more Classic Constructed. Basically, I saw Classic Constructed. I'm like, well, why am I going to go play against more Briars? Right? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. So I had to kind of avoid it like the plague. I think you'd be better off just playing friendlies with people and just finding non-Briar players if you didn't want to play against Briar. So the draft events were cool. Like our Arcane Rising, I think, had a limited event, like maybe a sealed event, and that was cool. I didn't get to participate in that one because we were doing other things, but the event was very fun overall, very well run. I would say that to anybody going to these big events in the future, take the benefit of my group's experience that you really want to make sure you're bringing food for yourself, whether it's protein bars or whatever you want to bring on you. You don't have a lot of time between rounds, and you don't want to be fighting in line for, you know, junk food essentially, like, you know, hot dogs and pizza and stuff like that. So especially when you're on a time crunch and you have to worry about all these other things going on. So just having access to stuff like protein bars or something to keep your, you know, mind sharp throughout the 8 hours of play that you have to do, I think was something that I was really glad that we did. The only weird thing was we weren't allowed to bring water into the event, which was like it's just a sealed ball of water. Like, I don't know why we weren't allowed to bring those in. Like, you think you're preparing and then you just got to do that. It's just very weird. And then yeah, it was really cool watching some of the feature matches too. Like, that was very well done. The camera was a little askew this time, but or a little offset from the center. But the fact that, you know, you get to see people that you know hop up on stream and kind of see how their matchups go in the tournament is very fun. And you know, again, unfortunately, there were like a billion Briars, but in a more diverse format, the feature table being offset, so they'll record the two matches simultaneously, but they'll air them one after another. Or at least that's how it felt like that's what they were doing. Was very cool. It really made it so there was a lot less downtime in the stream, and made it so that they could pick out matchups that seemed interesting. So that was very well done on their part, to kind of try and get some exposure to some decks that were not Briar. And so I was very glad to see that. The only thing I will say is that it feels kind of weird that when you go to the big event and you get the like the promos for attending, like the mats or the, you know, whatever you get. Sometimes it's random and they kind of just throw a lot of stuff in there that just seems to be extra. That didn't feel great. I got out fine. I got a map that I enjoyed and that I liked just fine, but it just feels like they kind of just had bulk inventory and just kind of threw it at you just to kind of get rid of it. It didn't really feel like there's anything like, oh, this is a special thing, you know, for you making it to Nats, or this is a special thing for you coming to this calling. Like when I went to the Vegas calling and I got the Nerd Championess playmat for being in the main event, they were just giving those out randomly to people at Nats. So it's like, yeah, that's fine, but now it makes the thing that I got less special to me, because yeah, I got it at Vegas, but it's not the Vegas mat, right? Or it's not the Nats mat. Kind of that bit of memory attached to, and sentimental value attached to the item that kind of makes you remember, yes, this was that event in that year, and you can look back on it fondly. So, you know, the like the cold foil promos were really cool. Like, they were giving out the Tales of Aria heroes, but they also gave out the Monarch heroes, you know, like Levia and Prism and such, cold foils to people for attending Nats. And, you know, I can understand why they did that, but again, at the same time, it felt like, you know, in the RTN season when I was able to get a hold of my Prism cold foil, it just made me think like, okay, well, you know, why are they kind of doing something that has happened months ago and then kind of just throwing them into the hodgepodge now? It just felt a little haphazard and a little unintentional, or I guess not meditated on thoroughly. So kind of a minor gripe, pretty minor gripe, but something that was just how it felt. And otherwise, I do think that they should put some time in for a break. I understand that, you know, it doesn't really help if everyone rushes the convenience, or not the convenience, but the what's it called, concessions at the same time. But I do think that going for 8 hours straight with zero allotted time to eat, like, even if you got food earlier and just had time to eat it without wolfing it down, I think would be very appreciated for the player base in general. It would prevent a lot of that burnout and a lot of that rush to finish your game because you want to eat type of deal. I think it would promote a better competitive experience, at least just like a 30-minute interim, just to be able to do that. Because a lot of time is wasted in the tournament because a lot of matches go to time, and when they have the judge time going on, they tend to not kind of keep you posted on when the next round's going to start. So you basically, as a competitor, are like, oh well, I have to make sure I'm ready, so you're not late or you don't get disqualified. But when you wait and wait and wait, now it's like 10, 15 minutes later, you said, well, I could have eaten in that time, but you were trying to be ready. So I think there is plenty of time to have those breaks thrown in there, just to, let people kind of have that time to take care of their bodies. But yeah, again, great event. It was a great experience getting to go there and hang out with everybody, meet new people, and perform. So thanks for watching. Thanks for cheering me on if you were cheering me on during the stream, and cheering me on even from home if you hadn't seen the stream. But we're hoping that I did well at the calling or the national championship. Thank you very much for your support. It means a lot. And it was great to meet all you guys that were at the tournament that I got to meet in person. Definitely, if I come to events near you, or we find out that we meet each other, definitely say hi. I love meeting you guys and talking to you guys and knowing where you're from, and kind of just hearing your experience with the game. So thank you again. It's a pleasure and a privilege to be able to bring you guys Flesh and Blood content and to be able to contribute to the community in this way. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to do that, and look forward to seeing you guys in the next video. So as always, stay cool. I'll catch you later. Peace.